Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Dynamics GP coffee break. This month's topic is how to do a bank reconciliation. So my name is Melissa, and I'm the facilitator today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the questions area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer questions at the end. This session will be recorded and posted on our blog, as well as shared with you later this week. So I would like to introduce our presenter today, Don McNulty, who is a solutions architect on our Dynamics GP team here at Encore. So Don, over to you.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming out today. So today we're going to talk about bank rec. It's kind of one of those things that the accountants do. We do them once a month, so that's kind of what we're working on. So for the agenda here, what we're going to do is introductions we've done, but what are the sources of transactions? What goes into a bank rec? What kind of transactions go into bank rec? How do I populate my bank rec transaction? What does it do? What it does, when to do it, and how to do it. I mean, basically, how do we create the bank rec so that we can match it up to our bank and have a third-party authentication on a balance in our on our balance sheet. Most of this is going to be done on a show and tell basis, and I'm going to actually show you all the different types of transactions, and we'll post them through, and we'll take a look at the bank rec when it's finished so you can see those transactions coming through. And then at the very end, we'll have some questions. All right, so the source of transactions. They come from all over GP, but primarily the number one place that most of the transactions come from is from the accounts payable and the accounts receivable. So accounts payable, all checks that are issued to a checkbook. So that is off the transaction entry screen, a PO if you're doing a PO deposit, if you're doing a check run, a manual check or a check run, either one, it will automatically push them through to the checkbook so that you can mark them off. Each check gets issued, gets entered into the checkbook individually so that you can mark them off one by one as they clear the bank. The voids are removed from the bank rec, but you must watch your dates. If you backdate a transaction on the checkbook register, but not in the GL posting date, you can throw your GL to bank rec out of balance if you're not careful. So I'll do a quick void and I'll show you how you should be looking at that particular screen. In the accounts receivable side, there's a couple of ways of getting them in: cash receipts and sales order processing. So on the AR side, the cash receipts, when you put the cash receipts in, they all go into the deposits, and then from the deposits, you can create a deposit which then shows up on the bank rec. You can also, there's a toggle in GP, which allows you to post directly a whole batch and have it create a summary transaction on your bank rec. So if you're doing deposits on a daily basis and all the checks come into AR and you process them all in one batch, that batch total equals the amount you're taking to the bank, then you can use that and it will post it directly through without having to do a secondary step, which is to create the bank deposit. Inside bank rec itself, we have bank transactions, bank transfers, and deposit entry. So bank transactions, that's increase and decrease adjustments, checks, withdrawals. This is how you can record a lot of the individual pieces of information. Things like lease payments, interest due, service charges, and things like that are done in bank transactions. Bank transfers is a unique location in that ordinarily a single transaction hits one bank account. The only exception to that is a bank transfer. And the transfer allows you to transfer money from one bank account to another bank account. It hits both bank recs at the same time. So the increase and the decrease are done individually, and then they are posted into both bank recs. It shows as a single transaction in the GL, but it does hit both bank recs. Deposit entry. Deposit entry is important because what happens is that you get 15 checks in a day, and then you put them on a deposit slip and take them to the bank. When you get your bank account, when you get your bank statement back from the bank, it's got one number for that day. You need to accumulate those pieces into a single number or a deposit, and that's what the deposit entry is about. It's to create the bank deposit that you actually took to the bank and have the teller / the drop-off process. Now, there's also a miscellaneous payment. It's called a miscellaneous check. And underneath miscellaneous checks, you have the ability to enter and print a check directly from the bank rec. This does not require a vendor, okay? The limitation on it is that it is functional currency only. So bank rec itself is multi-currency aware, which we can discuss later as well. What, when, and how? Okay, these are the big ones. Okay, what? Well, what it does is it allows us to clear transactions off of a list so that we end up with an outstanding list at the end of the month. At the end of the month, we say, well, these 35 checks did not clear the bank. These checks did clear the bank. We check off the ones that cleared the bank. So we've got a list from there. It allows us to create deposits so that we can match them to the statement, match them to the bank statement, and then we can auto create using the batch method, as I mentioned earlier. Transaction entry, we do the transactions. We do recurring entries such as lease payments and rent payments and things like that that may be pre-authorized payments and you're not entering them into accounts payable. Service charges, obviously the banks like to get their pound of flesh from us all, so we have to pay our service charges. And interest, either expense or revenue, depending on whether you carry a positive or negative balance on the bank. Transfers, we can move money between them. We hit two checkbooks at the same time. It does automatically look after the multi-currency in those particular transactions. Miscellaneous payments allows the printing, as I said, allows the printing of a check without a vendor, and it only works in functional currency. When? Well, most smaller firms do their bank recs on a monthly basis. At the end of each month, they get their bank statement in the mail, / they pick it up at the bank, or they download it, depending on what you arranged with your bank. You then turn around and do your bank rec based on that particular information. Some people will do it more frequently. I have some clients who do this daily, that every day they clear off all the transactions that have cleared in the bank and they check it online. And that way they maintain their bank balance throughout the month. You can also do it weekly or whatever periodic time you wish to do. You can run the same bank rec for the same period over and over again so that you can always take a look at it. Okay. And then how? Items are checked off using the reconciliation feature. There's a reconcile bank rec feature. Brings up a list of all the outstanding transactions and you check them off one by one or by groups or whatever it happens to be. Okay. So now we're going to talk, I'm going to show you how this actually works. So let me just flip my screen over to number 3. There we are. All right. So I have Great Plains. This is a Canadian version of GP, and you can tell that, especially in the bank, because you'll notice here that it says miscellaneous check and it's spelled with a CHEQUE. So if on the US side, if you load it as a US load, you will find that word CHECK. So that's the difference, really the only difference there. And you'll see that throughout this demo. So what I've got here is I've got a checkbook. So what I've done is when we set up checkbooks, we set them up inside cards. And I've set this particular checkbook up for demos, and I've got it, and I called it RBC US dollar. So there it is there. We apply it to a bank account, we tell it what the current balance is, and we go from there. Okay? Once we've done that, all the transactions that we do go through there. So as we hit these bank recs, they will automatically post these transactions through. So inside purchasing, whenever I create a transaction batch, for instance, when I go into my build a batch, and I build a payment batch, and I type in test, and I want to add, I have to specify a bank account. If I hit RBC US, like so, I can now create a check run. Now it's going to go to this bank account. So therefore, any checks that I push on this and push through will show up inside my Reconcile bank, which I've got listed over here. And when I hit the transactions, I'll just quickly show you what it looks like underneath. So that's what it looks like underneath. And we've got some deposits, we've got some checks in here. I've got a withdrawal, I've got an increase adjustment, a decrease adjustment, and I've got a couple of bank transfers. And this was so that I had some transactions to check off. If I was to create a batch run here and I was to pay somebody, it would then show up on here if I processed it all the way through. Same thing is also true as if I go into here and I click on a standard transaction, and I'll just put one in here. I'll put one in for Ace Travel. Oops. Again, I've already used that number. Put a 9 on it. We're going to make it $1,000, like so. We're going to take out the deposit. We're going to make this just a straight $1,000. I am going to go on to check. I'm going to put in $1,000 here. I can do this, and now I can change my bank account to the checkbook that I want to use, the RBC, so it shows up. Actions and OK. And at this point here, my distributions are going to travel, which is fine. I go OK. And now if I was to post this particular transaction with this check number, which is number 2465, will show up on my bank rec. Oops. And I can close this. Now, in order for it to show up, I have to close this and I reread it. And when I reread this, there it is right there. That's the check. Now, when I highlight this, I can always drill down and take a look at it. And this will then show me that this is the check. And there's the check that I just issued. And there's the distribution, and there's the apply. There's what I applied it to. That was that transaction that I just entered. Now, if I go into a different check in here and I drill down, I can always take a look and see what this one is. This is for Alton Manufacturing. They are checks, and it tells you what dates they were voided and things like that. So these are all the checks. And right now I've got adjusted book balance, 100,000, whatever happens to be, and then I can just start to check off the pieces. So this would be, I take my bank rec and I would start to check off, okay, those deposits have cleared and these checks have cleared. I'm going to leave this check, the 82,000 outstanding, and I'm going to leave that one, and then these are directing, we're going to check those off, and the bank transfers, I'll took some money out, put some money in. So I'm out $26,000. So that means that my $100,000 over here is not right. I did not calculate or have a bank rec in front of me to be able to do this, but this bank statement end balance comes from your bank. Once you've checked everything off, it should balance to zero. When this goes to zero, you can reconcile. When you reconcile, what it does is it allows you to print a number of different things. And I'm going to hit the print button here, and I'm just going to print all four. I'm going to go OK. Screen, 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 screen. There we are. So the first report shows me my bank statement ending balance, the outstanding checks, and my adjusted balance. This balance here equals the cutoff, 17,707. There's the cutoff there, and then I should have this as, these should all be balanced all the way through. That would then allow me to say that this is a balanced bank rec. When I click the second one, there is no adjustments because I haven't put any in. But the third one's most important. This is a list of all the outstanding, these are the marked transactions. These are what I've marked off. So these ones have all been marked off, and yes, these have occurred on my bank statement and in my system. So I'm good. Then the last one lists off the outstanding checks. These are the two checks that were issued but have not yet cleared the bank. So you may have a lot of them, you may have a few of them. You could have deposits on here that cross the month end. I put the deposit in on March 31st or on April 30th, but in actual fact, the actual deposit didn't hit the bank until May 1st because I went after 3 o'clock on the 30th of April. So once I've done that, I can then close this. I can do an adjustment here. So if I've got things that I know I've got interest income, for instance, and I go, and there should be some interest in here somewhere. There's interest expense, interest expense. So there we are there. So I'm writing this difference off. So there we are. We go, okay. So now at this point, I've got a 17,707.57 should be what I have in my general ledger. And when I post everything through, I will get that number in my GL. So this adjustment, now I can reconcile. I can't hit that reconcile until this goes to zero. This here, and shows you that same rec and tells you there it is there. There's the adjustments are sitting here, and now I'm down to 17,707. There's my bank less my outstanding checks, gives me 17,707 as well. So these two now balance. And then the third balance that you need to do is you have to take this balance and compare it to your general ledger. If you don't do it to your general ledger is what shows up on your financial statements. Your bank rec does not necessarily do that. So I could post this through, and all of these transactions would then clear. Okay, and that would be where the $100,050 comes from. So, but we go, well, I don't have enough deposits. I'm missing some deposits. I know I deposited more than this. So we have to say, where did the deposits go? So when we go into transactions, again, back into financial, and we go into deposits. And I'm going to go 0420, 27. I'm working in 2027. Checkbook ID is RBC USD. Now inside here, I can see these are unprocessed deposits. So let me change this. I made a mistake there. Let's say this is the 10th. So on the 10th, I deposited this check, 258, and I also deposited this check on the 10th. And I deposited this check on the 10th. And I deposited this check on the 10th. Oh, but this one didn't go in until the 13th. So this is the $14,000 that I deposited on the 10th of April. So I can now process this and go, okay, I'm going to post that. And when I post it, and now when I come back in here and I go 041327, I now only have the one left. Oh, well, that's my one from there. So I could then clear that one off as well. Now these will add it over here. We go post. No transaction occurs when we do that unless you're using multi-currency. And I'll talk about that. I can talk about that later. We go save. Let me close this. So now when I go back to here and I go okay, and I go to transactions, I now have two uncleared deposits. They've now shown up. This will equal what's on my bank statement. So I can now select this one and select this one. And I'll go and make my bank balance again. I'll just hit $10 and go okay. So now I'm out the 41,000, and I'm out because I put these two numbers in. So as I go through this, I would then make sure that all my transactions were still outstanding. We'll make a couple more outstanding. For the withdrawal adjustment is outstanding, and we'll add that is outstanding. There. So you can do whatever you need to inside here in order to get the right additional list. What you're most concerned about with this are these two reports. The reconciliation report that tells you whether you're reconciled, and the outstanding transaction report. So this is a list of your outstanding transactions. As you can see, I got 3 checks now and a withdrawal. I don't have a deposit, so my deposit's cleared. So that is how you do a bank rec. Now there is an electronic version of this where you can, if you have large numbers of checks that get processed through on a monthly basis, ticking and checking them off over 1,000 checks is a lot of work. You can get electronic bank rec is included in GP, and the bank files can be then used and imported directly from a BA2 file directly into the bank rec, and it will check off all your checks and deposits that it checks the control number for the check as well as the amount. On the deposit, it looks at the amount, and the date must be within 5 days of the actual date, because it knows that it's possible that you deposited on the 28th, but the bank didn't process it till the 29th. So it does look at that. I did not set that up for today's meeting, but that is something that we have. Other things that you need to know about is that deposits that come through from sales order processing will automatically flow through to your bank rec, as will your deposits as you create them for the prepayments. Okay. Now, the last thing that happens is, of course, that when I look at this, and I say, okay, well, these are all my transactions. Is this correct? And things like that. Does it balance to my general ledger? So there is a reconcile to GL function inside GP for routines. And inside here, we have a choice of payables, receivables, inventory, and bank rec. So if I grab my bank rec and I bring up my checkbook, like so, and I type in 043027, so that I pick up all my April transactions. And when I go process, just put this on the desktop. Okay, process. When this processes, this is going to generate an Excel spreadsheet. As you can see, there it is right there. We'll also open Excel. And it will tell me potentially matched transactions. Now, the thing that will throw your bank rec out, if you do a journal entry to the bank rec, your bank will not balance to your GL. So inside here, we've got matched and unmatched transactions. You'll notice inside here, I've got nothing listed on the left-hand side. Okay? Let me just do this like so. I have no transactions on the left-hand side. So I go, well, that's kind of strange. Why do I have that? I'm going to go don't save. I'm going to go back to here and go, well, why did that not work properly? I expected to see some transactions. And when I go to series post here, is because all of these CMTRXs, there's my bank and my payables transactions, I've got to mark all and go post. I have not been posting through my general ledger, so nothing got posted to the general ledger. It only got posted directly to it. As it happened, I put these transactions in this morning. There we are, they're all posted. So now when I come back to here and I go this, bank rec, pick up my RBC, 043027, and I hit process. Now I've got matching transactions. I've got unmatched transactions, I've got potentially matched transactions, and I've got matched transactions. So inside here, this is a list of all the transactions that have gone through. Why they don't match, maybe they're not posted yet, what's going on, I'm not sure. I have to, like these ones here, it looks like there's a deposit that's missing because there's some information in my general ledger, right? That is not in my bank rec here. So that means that and these are cash receipts. Again, I don't know why this is making it so small, so it's hard to see, but let me just make this a little bigger so you can see it. See, these are cash receipts. So these payments, $293, $94.95, $900 and $956 is sitting in my general ledger, but it is not in my RBC transaction. So there's no deposit. Now there's the deposit. There's a deposit here of $958. This matches this. I have not created because I created in a summary transaction. Potentially match, these ones match 1094. This one, the 156 is right there as well, the 1094 for the total, depositing receipts, and there's the total there as we move through. So it does show everything that we need to do. The difference is nothing. My bank rec beginning and my ending is exactly right, 59,663. So they are actually matched, but these appear to be unmatched simply because of the way they've been posted. So, but it does show you, if you do a journal entry, it'll show up on this side here and not on this side at all. Okay? So that's something to be aware of. You need to make sure that it balances correctly to your general ledger because that's what's going to show up on your financial statements. All right. Now, I'm going to, let's see here. What's next? Oh, questions. Melissa, did we get any questions?
Yes, actually, we have a couple questions if you're ready for those now.
Sure.
Okay, so first one, if an AP check was voided after the bank rec was done, how can we reprint the reports? Would the process be the same if next month bank rec is already started?
Once you've cleared the bank and it's marked it and moved it to clearance, it'll put in a negative amount against the new bank rec. So as it's
Okay,
void, it should show a negative against the original one, against the bank rec. So the check will then have a negative number.
okay, so next one, on the adjustment screen, can you change the default on the transactions from interest income to other income?
Yes. So when you hit the adjustments inside here, you can change this to whatever you wish. Oh, you mean the default so that you don't have to change it? No, it automatically defaults to the first one. There's no way of changing that default that I'm aware of. So to make it so it always comes up looking like this, no, I'm afraid not. You have to change that each time.
Okay, great. That's what we had for questions.
Okay, and the one thing I did mention earlier is that I did say I would talk a bit about voiding transactions. When you void a transaction, what's important to do on the void, and these are the void the historical transactions. And I'll use Ace Travel because I know I've got a bunch of checks in there for him. There it is there. When you void this transaction, this void date that you see here and this posting date, this is what affects your general ledger. This is when it's going to affect your bank rec. If these two dates are not in the same period, your banks will not balance. Okay? They will not balance to the GL if you put this, if I was to put this back to March. If I took this one and I voided it back in 2023 and I void this in 2024, right, I'm going to have a problem. My bank rec will not balance because the two dates are not in sync. So if you wish, and it will tell you here whether or not they've been reconciled or not. These particular items have not. These have been reconciled. Okay, so if I click on this one here, I can change this to 040127, 040127. So if I do that and then I void this, this will then void it as if, and it will make my April bank rec correct. The older bank recs are already done and marked and gone through the history. When I hit void, that will void those transactions and put them now. That particular one's in a different bank account. Okay, but that is when you do the void, make sure you watch these two dates because if you don't, they will cause you lots of grief on your bank rec. Okay. And the timing on the bank rec is all based upon these dates here, the statement cutoff date here. The same is true on the deposits for your dates as well. So when you go into your financial, you go into deposits. Remember, I was missing the deposit, bank deposits. If I go like this, 043027, checkbook RDC, USD. These inside here are, you got to watch the dates inside here as well. I have marked them all off at this point. But if I go to Uptown Trust now, yeah, there's some checks from long ago, and I can mark all kinds of different checks if I need to. Like so. Okay, that just changes the bank account. All right. All right, I think that was it. I'm right on time this morning. So
That's right.
multi-currency is the other one that I should mention. It does do multi-currency. The currency that you see here is the currency of all these transactions are in the currency of the bank. Each bank checkbook can only have a single currency. So in this particular case, these are all US dollars. But if I was to change this here and I was to close this and bring up my Canadian one and go save, 043027, 043027. I'm not sure I've got any transactions in here, mind you. This particular one is the transfer that I did earlier today. This transfer was that $1,000 US that you saw. So when I go like this and I look at the transfer, I transferred $1,000 out. You remember I checked it off on the bank rec for the URBC US. Here it is on the RBC Canadian, and it's running at 13.33 because I have an exchange rate attached of 0.75, 75 cents to the dollar. So for every Canadian dollar, it's only, for every US dollar, it's $1.33.33. Okay? That's so, and it does look after that. So all of your transactions that you see on this list here are in Canadian dollars, and all of your adjustments and stuff like that are done in the currency of the bank rec. And the last piece, which I did mention earlier, this is what the miscellaneous check looks like. You pick your check stub, you put your information in here. When you hit print, you can actually print the check in the format that's listed. This format is not the same as the format for your AP transactions and needs to be modified to match your check specs. Okay, just so that you know. All right, oh, and I think that was it. So thank you all very much. Let me just,
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Dawn, for the information today. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.